There are mornings when you wake with the uncanny sensation of having returned from a dream that was never truly yours. You orient yourself toward the light, but in one unconscious instant, his face drifts back like a tender ghost, neither painful nor willing to release you. No message, no call, no trace remains, except for the vague impression that he still lingers somewhere inside you. And you ask yourself, why? Why does the mind stubbornly return to a figure that has long since departed? We often call this longing, yet in truth it is something deeper. It is the echo of a fragment of soul not yet retrieved, as though part of your energy remains lodged in an unfinished past. Carl Jung describes such phenomena as possession by the unconscious, when inner images do not merely reside in the psyche, but move through us, shaping our vital energy like ancient gods. You are not insane. You are not weak. You are simply being summoned back by a part of yourself you have never faced. Set aside the fantasies of fate or supernatural whispers. What you feel is not the voice of the universe. It is the reverberation of an unhealed pattern. And perhaps what you truly miss is not him, but you, the version of yourself that once longed to be loved. Why does the mind circle endlessly around someone who is no longer there? Why do we feel tethered to a vanished presence, as if some invisible thread between two souls has not been severed? Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The truth is this: you are not remembering a person. You are remembering the way you felt in their presence. That sensation, the aliveness, the recognition, the sense of being needed, has become a chemical ritual in your body, a familiar liturgy unconsciously performed whenever emptiness returns. But here is where transformation begins. You do not need to shut the door, you need to walk through it. What clings to you is not love, but a pattern, a recurring emotional imprint, an inner image not yet brought to light. And when you turn toward it with awareness, rather than longing, you discover it can become a key to inner freedom. Freedom from dependence, freedom from the feeling of lack, freedom from the mental game between yearning and denial. So how do we recognize and escape this cycle? How do we distinguish between intuition and unhealed wound? How do we reclaim the energy leaking away into memory, into imagined conversations, into the shadows of what was? In the pages ahead, we will trace the psychological architecture beneath this experience. We will explore why the image of him still arises within you, though he no longer exists outside of you, through the lens of Jung's shadow work and the journey back to yourself. For sometimes what you need is not to forget someone, but to remember yourself before you lost her in the effort to be loved. He is no longer there, but you remain carrying within you the fragment of soul once touched by his presence. The strangest thing about the human mind is that it does not move in linear time. You may live in the present and yet be pulled backward into the past by a glance, a laugh, or even a silence. Jung called this possession by the image, when an inner figure ceases to be mere memory and becomes a living psychic entity, one powerful enough to shape your feelings, your actions, and even the way you perceive the world. We do not remember others only with the mind. We remember with energy. Some bonds are forged not through words, but through invisible currents between two fields of being. When you have loved deeply, a part of your energy has been linked and even fused into the other. This is not superstition. This is emotional patterning, the architecture of feelings shaped by repeated experience. Each time he made you feel loved, your brain etched a chemical signature, a mixture of dopamine, oxytocin, and adrenaline, and you became addicted, not to him as a person, but to the state of yourself that existed in his presence. This is why, though your mind knows it is over, your heart continues to echo unspoken rhythms. Not because you are weak, but because your unconscious has not yet been illumined. Jung once said, "The unconscious will direct your life until you make it conscious." So the question is not, why can't I forget him, but rather, what in me is trying to be heard through his image? In Jung's view, every profound relationship activates an unfinished part of the self. For women, this is often the animus, the inner masculine shaped by lived experience, the father's imprint, and cultural expectation. When a man arrives who resonates with an unintegrated animus, we do not merely love him, we deify him. We imagine we love him, but in truth, we are in love with the psychic reflection of ourselves revealed through him. Thus, whenever he returns in your mind, it is not simply memory revisited. It is a call from an unreconciled fragment of soul, a part longing to be seen, to be understood, and to be loved, but this time by you. And here begins the work of the shadow. Shadow is not merely darkness. It is everything you once denied, repressed, or sacrificed in order to be loved. Sometimes the shadow wears the face of an abandoned dream, or the belief I am not enough, or the fear, without him, I am no one. Left unexamined, the shadow rules you through the people you are drawn to, the relationships you repeat, and the emotions that resurface without explanation. So how do you step free? Not by erasing his image, but by turning inward and asking, what part of me is not being heard? Is it the abandoned child within? Is it the woman who believed love must be dramatic to be real? Is it the part of you that has always labored to be good enough to stay? Healing begins not when he returns, but when you return to yourself. When you learn to sit with longing without being consumed. When you write down the words you never dared to speak and to send but to release. When you face the ache and whisper, I see you, and I will not leave you as others once did. You cannot change the past, but you can alchemize it, turning memory into the raw material of a stronger, deeper, freer self. And you need not walk this journey alone, for we who have loved deeply and suffered greatly are also finding our way back to ourselves. We are a community, a circle of souls learning to love without losing who we are. Share your story in the space below. Perhaps your words will become a light for someone wandering in their own night. And know this, the next step will take us deeper into this path of healing, into the distinction between intuition and obsession. How do you discern whether you are truly soul-connected or merely clinging to a familiar image? How do you tell the voice of the heart from the echo of an unhealed wound? In what follows, we will pierce through the illusion of destined love, so you may finally see who is truly living in your mind, him or the self you once abandoned in an unawakened dream. There is a quiet paradox that lingers in many hearts. You know, the relationship is no longer right. You understand the other has left, and yet you cannot stop thinking of them. Not because you are still in love, but because your mind is addicted. Not addicted to the person, but to the feelings they once awakened in you. Carl Jung once said, every emotional experience leaves a trace in the unconscious, and when repeated, it becomes a pattern the psyche clings to. You may have lived in a relationship woven with contradictions, affection, and wounding intertwined. Yet it was precisely that repetition that formed a familiar chemical symphony to which your body learned to dance. The waiting for messages, the thrill of being chosen, and then abandon, the trembling before a single phrase, all of it created an emotional roller coaster your unconscious has become addicted to. Jung did not speak of addiction as a disorder. He saw it as the soul's attempt to recreate an unfinished experience. And if you find yourself endlessly caught in thoughts of someone no longer present, it may be that you are addicted to familiar darkness, a kind of shadow addiction, where the shadow within, rather than being cast out, becomes a silent companion. The shadow is not only the keeper of wounds, it is also the reservoir of emotional habits that once allowed you to survive. Sometimes you hold on to someone not because they deserve your love, but because the feeling of being not enough has become so familiar that you unconsciously seek it again and again. Like the child who longed to be seen by their parents, you find yourself choosing those who cannot see. You're playing the same drama, hoping this time for a different ending. This is what Jungian psychology calls emotional repetition compulsion, the drive to repeat unresolved patterns of feeling. Left unrecognized, it makes you mistake familiar pain for authentic love. So how do you step out of this emotional addiction? First, stop asking, why can't I forget them? And begin asking, what am I trying to feel again? Are you seeking validation? A sense of being needed? The feeling that you are special? When you are honest at this depth, you begin to separate the image of the other from the emotional role they represented. And that is the first step toward liberation. Jung compared the unconscious to an ocean with hidden currents shaping every movement on the surface. You cannot conquer the ocean by swimming against it, but you can learn to listen to the tides, recognize the waves, and choose a course that does not pull you under. One effective way to do this is to rewire your emotional associations. Each time his image surfaces, instead of asking, is he thinking of me? Ask, how do I feel when I think of him? And if the answer is exhaustion, confusion, or anxiety, know this: that is not love. It is a psychological habit disguised as romance. Write it out, not to explain why he left, but to understand why you have not yet returned to yourself. Write down everything you wished he would do for you. Then ask, why have I not given this to myself? And if you are hearing these words, know that you are not alone. With those who are learning to untangle emotional knots to heal uncertain bonds, are a community finding our way back to wholeness. Share your story, your reflection, even a single line in the space below. Perhaps through your words, someone else will glimpse themselves and begin their own journey. In the next part, we will dive into the distinction between intuition and shadow desire. For not every inner calling is divine guidance. Some arise from unhealed wounds, from the unconscious, not yet brought to light. How can you tell if you are moving toward true illumination or merely being led by the shadow not yet integrated? Stay with this work. For the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. He was never the door. He was only the mirror. The door has always been within you. Sometimes the deepest sorrow is not in losing someone, but in realizing that you were never fully present in your own life. We enter relationships hoping someone will see us fill the hidden spaces we conceal. Yet Carl Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? You have dreamed of a healing love of someone who would arrive and stay. But if most of your psychic energy still circles around someone no longer here, perhaps it is time to awaken. Not to escape the pain, but to enter it and to discover something greater than love, the wholeness of being. In Jungian psychology, this process is called individuation, the journey of gathering scattered fragments of the soul back into unity. It is not a quick life skill. It is an inner pilgrimage, a path that requires you to face the shadow, to embrace the inner child, to discern the voice of intuition from the pull of unhealed wounds. Individuation does not happen under glittering lights. It happens when you sit alone in the dark, listening to your own heartbeat, not for someone else, but for yourself. It happens when you stop sending messages just to test if they still remember you. When you no longer need closure from them because you have begun closing old chapters with your own presence in the now. The path to becoming yourself sometimes begins with ceasing to strive to be chosen. Because you are no longer the girl sitting by the phone waiting for a message, you are the woman learning to hear the sound of her own soul. And your questions begin to change. No longer will he come back, but am I truly alive? Individuation is when you stop seeking the perfect other half and begin to reclaim every part of yourself you once abandoned: the child who was rejected, the maiden who longed to be saved, the strong woman who is weary from always being strong alone. When these parts are seen, understood, and loved, you no longer need another to feel enough, for you have become yourself whole, profound, and at peace from within. And only then can love truly appear, not to complete you, but to expand with you. Not as a savior, but as a companion. If these words touch something in you, share your reflections in the space below. Not to confess or to explain, but to contribute to a community where each person is walking the path toward their most authentic self. A place where we do not need to be perfect to be understood, only honest to be connected. In the next part, we will go deeper into the difference between soul longing and toxic attachment. For not everything that feels profound is a spiritual sign. Some longings are illusions of unhealed wounds. Some stirrings are echoes of old habits. And if you do not recognize this, you may end up mistaking shadow for destiny. Stay with this journey, for what you are seeking is not ahead of you. It is waiting to be awakened within you. And when you truly return to yourself, the world will no longer feel like a place of exile, but will become the mirror reflecting the wholeness you have found. There is a paradox in healing that few speak of. Sometimes the very moment you begin to truly love yourself is also the moment sorrow rises most fiercely. Not because you are on the wrong path, but because you are so profoundly on the right one that the forgotten parts of you finally feel safe enough to speak. Jung called this the return of the repressed, the resurgence of what has long been buried, the wounds you hid so carefully, the hunger for love you once forced down. All of it, in the stillness where you finally face yourself, emerges like ghosts soaked in tears. And this is good, because nothing can be released until it has first been fully felt. Most of us try to move on without ever moving in. We attempt to escape memories instead of entering them completely, with compassion without judgment. Yet what you avoid does not disappear. It becomes an unseen figure haunting your gaze, shaping the partners you choose, tightening your chest whenever you think of someone who is no longer here. And then you ask yourself, why am I drawn to those who never fully choose me? Jung offered a liberating truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You may think you are attracting the same type of people, but in reality, you are attracting unfinished experiences within yourself. Old patterns, memories without closure, false beliefs about love etched into your heart since childhood. And if you do not recognize this, you will continue to mistake old wounds for passion, uncertainty for destiny, and once again abandon yourself in the search for love. This is why this stage matters, because you cannot rebuild your life from ashes while deceiving yourself with the idea that I've forgotten. You must dare to look back, not to blame, but to bring the light of awareness into the shadows of the unconscious. For only presence, honesty, and kindness toward yourself can open the door to true freedom. Ask yourself, who was the first person who made you feel that love was conditional? What did you learn about your worth from past relationships? Do you still believe you must prove yourself to deserve love? When you begin answering these questions, not with your mind but with your heart, you are reshaping the unconscious. You are no longer repeating, you are rewriting. And if you need a place to share that journey, leave your reflections in the space below. It could be a single word, a symbol, a moment of recognition, because you are not alone. Here we are, a community awakening together. No one is above another. We are simply souls making our way home step by step, feeling by feeling, tear by tear. The next part will mark a crucial shift. How do you distinguish between real love and attachment born of fear? Do the tremors you feel come from the heart or from the echo of loss? We will explore how to tell apart these inner signals that look so alike, yet lead to utterly different destinies. And once you recognize this difference, you will no longer confuse emotional hunger with true connection. What is true love, and why do we so easily mistake it for attachment born of fear? A question that seems simple, yet behind it lies a labyrinth of the unconscious, where we are drawn not because the other is extraordinary, but because they unknowingly touch the blind spots of our soul. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But not every reaction is love. Sometimes it is simply trauma meeting trauma. Your loneliness colliding with their fear of abandonment. Your distorted self-belief fusing with the idealized image you have projected onto them. And so you think you have fallen in love. But in truth, you may only be caught in another cycle of emotional addiction, a dependency of the psyche disguised in romantic language." Pause for a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time I felt at peace in a relationship? If your answer is, "I don't remember," then perhaps you have never truly experienced real love, the kind that makes you feel free, not afraid of being lost. We have grown accustomed to loving from a place of lack of safety, lack of trust, lack of authentic connection to ourselves. That is why when someone arrives and offers a little warmth, we are quick to call it destined love. But love is not the daily anxiety of being abandoned. That is the mark of attachment rooted in wounds, not in conscious choice. True love does not require you to abandon yourself to keep another. It does not erase you. It brings you back to yourself more deeply than before. Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." And for you to step into healthy love, you must face the way you have loved, not to condemn yourself, but to forgive the part of you still learning how to love rightly. Perhaps you once believed that sacrifice, pursuit, and carrying the weight alone were normal in love. But those were merely chapters from old book stories in which you never got to write the ending. Now you can choose differently. You can love without losing yourself. You can miss someone without returning. You can keep your heart open while maintaining clear boundaries. This is love born of awareness, not here to save you, but to walk beside you. Ask yourself, who am I when I no longer strive to be loved? The answer will lead you to a profound truth: you have always been enough, whether or not anyone chooses you. And if these words resonate with you, share a fragment of your journey in the space below. It could be a feeling, a memory, a symbol you carry in this season. Each of us is learning how to love ourselves again, and you are not alone in that. The next part will take us deeper into a vital transformation, how not only to understand the theory, but to truly feel I no longer need them in order to feel enough. This is not false independence, but inner sovereignty, where you are no longer pulled by circumstance, but guided by the light within. And when that shift occurs, you will no longer be drawn to those who only mirror your wounds. You will begin to attract the souls who lift you higher without asking you to lose yourself. There comes a quiet moment in life when you sit alone, no longer checking your phone, no longer staring into the mirror wondering, am I good enough, yet no longer caught in the spiral of, what are they thinking about me? And suddenly, almost strangely, you feel a peace you have never known before. It is the moment you realize you no longer have to do anything to be loved. No more holding an image together. No more decoding silences between messages. No more asking the universe, why didn't they choose me? And Jung, in his profound stillness, once reminded us solitude is not absence of love, but its complement. Loneliness is not the lack of love, but the condition in which real love can appear. For only when you are quiet enough to remain with yourself do you see what you truly seek is not someone to fill you, but a space where you can be wholly yourself, unjudged, uncorrected, not needing to fight for existence in someone else's eyes. When you no longer feel compelled to become a version worthy of love, you become simply yourself, and that is far more powerful than any outer charm. You see, many believe attraction lies in making another think endlessly about them. But for Jung, true allure arises when you no longer need anyone to think of you because you are too absorbed in living an inspired life. Real magnetism flows from the one no longer bound by the hunger for approval. In that moment, your energy grows clear, steady, quietly captivating, like the depths of a still lake. And then something remarkable happens. Those who once made you feel small suddenly lose their power. Not because they changed, but because you no longer need them to feel your worth. You have stepped out of the field of scarcity and into another dimension where self-respect is not something to chase, but something you live with every day. You begin to ask different questions. Not how do I make them choose me, but what kind of relationship do I want to create? You no longer replay the story of having and losing. You write a new chapter where love is not driven by fear, but born of awareness, where you do not need someone to return because you know if they truly belong, they will come not because you are better now, but because you are already yourself. And if they do not come, that too as well, because you no longer need anyone to feel whole. If you are reading this far, tell me what part of you is stirring right now. Leave a few lines in the comments. No sharing is ever too small, for who knows, your words may be the key that opens the door for another. Here we are, a circle, learning to heal together. No one at the center, no one left behind. The next part, the conclusion, will be a declaration. A manifesto for the woman who no longer waits, no longer asks for her lost soul to be returned, but steps forward radiant, strong, and unapologetic. For as Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and you are already on your way. And if you've walked with me this far, perhaps some part of you has already begun to shift. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but quietly, like roots pressing deeper into the earth in search of water. Water of awareness, water of inner freedom. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And the moment you begin to see clearly why you've hurt, why you've repeated a certain way of loving, a certain way of losing, a certain way of waiting, that is the moment you begin to step out of the cycle. You don't need anyone to tell you that you are worthy. You only need to start living as if it were true every day. Not by forcing yourself to prove it, not by posting vague statuses, not by pretending to show them you're fine, but by actually living well from within. Yes, there may still be nights when your heart aches or a song that reminds you of someone, but the memory no longer suffocates you. It becomes like wind passing through then gone. You do not resist, you do not cling. You simply observe quietly and then return to yourself. And in that very moment, you are free. Freedom is not about forgetting someone. It is remembering and still moving forward with gratitude that they were once there and with the courage to continue without needing them to return. I don't know where you are in your journey. Perhaps you are just stepping into the pain, or perhaps you've walked a long distance already. Wherever you are, I want you to know you are not alone. There are thousands like you, learning to love themselves more deeply each day, learning to sit with loneliness without being drowned by it, learning to look in the mirror and smile without waiting for someone else to confirm their worth. And if you recognize yourself in these words, leave a comment. It doesn't have to be long, a symbol, a sentence, or simply "im here." So we know there is a circle of souls awakening together, choosing to step out of the old stories and become their true selves, whole, strong, and tender all at once. If this video touches something and you don't forget to subscribe, not because I need the numbers, but because you deserve more moments like this, spaces where you can return to yourself without judgment, without rushing, without pretending to be strong. And turn on the bell if you want future videos to arrive at the right time, as gentle reminders that you are not left behind. You are on the journey home to yourself. We will explore more shadow, the sacred feminine anima individuation, and how healing happens not through theory, but through presence, moment by moment each day. You've carried your heart through enough thorns. Now let it live in the peace it has always longed for. And I will meet you in the videos to come where we will keep listening, diving deeper, and healing together.